the issues of having to manage organizational change, okay, is very common in the military. And it happens at all levels, okay? And it happens across all what the military calls warfighting domains, whether it's Navy, Army, Air Force, whatever. Because organizations constantly have to change and evolve, in the case of the military, to response to external threats, to response to budget pressures, and on and on and on. So I'd say, in my opinion, that drives a constant need at multiple levels for organizational change. It's just, I think, some of the structured processes that people who do organizational change for a living are accustomed to, they may not be applied the same way in the military like they are outside.
I agree. The language certainly is different in the military as compared to what civilians may use in the change management process. And I suggest that the change is different at the different organizational levels too, that at the command level, the change is, to ensure that the command is ready to go and move forward, associated with the orders and the top-down advisements that come down. And the structures, the command discussions are going to be significantly different because we are going to be focused on the immediate missions and the immediate troop needs and where do we go from here. Whereas our admirals, our generals, and them, in the Pentagon and such, might have more global discussions on the impact and the implications, especially between the platforms too, as the services are becoming more and more joint in our efforts.
Yeah, and I also think what you will see is as they execute whatever that change process is, much of the planning, much of the integration of effort, synchronization of activity, that's going to occur at the higher levels. It's the difference between planning and operations fundamentally. At the higher levels, Pentagon, generals, admirals, all that stuff, it's going to be much more focused on planning for the change. Okay, and as you get to the lower levels where, quite frankly, the rubber meets the road, whether it's in the military or civilian life, that's where it's going to be more about executing the change, tracking progress, measuring whatever it is we need to measure about the change, and then reporting it up.
I'm remembering a phrase as we were coming up through the ranks, it's lead, follow, or get out of the way. Mm-hmm. Many more adjectives were added sometimes to that phraseology. But it was definitely the military that provided, at least in my opinion, the idea that there are times when I need to take on different roles depending on what it is that is transpiring. At one time I might be the leader, at another time I'm a follower. The other time I need to step out of the way to allow the change to happen or allow the effort to take place.
I'm thinking back to several examples that I just kind of boiled down. One is I had a boss who always used to tell me, failure to plan is planning to fail. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that you need to think through, and I think this is something that people from the military, particularly those that are more experienced, they do that pretty well. They understand, at least, conceptually, the importance of having to plan for success, whatever the task is. I'm also, your point about, have the grace and the understanding to know when to lead, follow, or get out of the way. I remember another boss once told me, he's like, son, they always call me son, I don't know why. Typically it was the older guys. Like, son, he's like, son, the good Lord gave you 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Try to use them in equal proportion. And I think sometimes when it comes to things like change management and skills and things you have to be able to do, I think listening sometimes is a very underutilized skill.
And there's another aspect that we've learned too is while we're in those different roles, there are times that we need to help train our troops up and allow them to take leadership roles and allow them to experience that. And that requires us to back off. It requires us to let them have that opportunity to know what they're going to grow into and know that they have a support mechanism, there available to it. And I think that's important in civilian life too, is we never want to be the single point of failure. Yeah. And we always are if we are the person that is the only person that knows that particular thing. So as we train our troops up, as we help our civilian, subordinates, now it's a matter of, okay, where can you lead? Where do you want to lead? How can I help you to get to that point? And I think the military helps us understand that too.
Yeah. And one of the more effective approaches I've seen, whether my time in the military or now having made the transition to the civilian world, the leaders at all levels who are most effective in managing that change are the ones who get out to whatever it is they need to see. The docs, the units in contact, whatever the case may be. They actually get out and see what's going on. So they hear what they hear in terms of briefings and feedback from their staff. But they get out and they walk the docks, they walk the line, they talk to the people at the lower levels who are having to implement that change and get the feedback firsthand. Find out what their issues are, find out what they're dealing with.